Welcome to the Full Circle podcast hosted by me, Anna Squelch. I'm here to share stories and interviews with inspiring people in the wellness, entrepreneurial, spiritual, and personal development space. On this podcast, I'll be sharing my journey plus inspirational tips, tricks, and life hacks so we can all just be happier, healthier, more purposeful human beings. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Full Circle podcast. If you're tuning in for the first time, it's Anna Squelch. Welcome. Take a seat, sit down, get comfortable. Today's episode is all about resolving internal stress and changing our relationship to stress. So let's just start by taking a deep breath. And in the background, you'll hear the cicadas and the bird sounds and all of the usual goings on that happen when I'm recording from my home office, because I just have a beautiful backyard and there's just so much wildlife living out there. So you guys get to, hopefully, if my noise cancellation headphones are not cancelling it out, hopefully you get to hear some sweet, sweet nature sounds. So anyway, I'll stop rabbiting on today's episode. Actually, before I dive in, I'm sure I've got some announcements. What have I got? Coming up, I'm about to open enrollments for Heart School Immersion, which is my 8-week group coaching program for women looking to manifest more love in their lives. So we go through so many things: letting go of the past, resolving past trauma and past hurt from relationships, identifying the patterns that are keeping you small, raising your self-worth, getting really clear on the type of relationship you're calling in, and all of that good stuff. And the basis of the program, or the focus of the program, is really on the relationship with yourself, because the relationship we have with ourselves really dictates all other relationships in our life, particularly the romantic ones. So if you're interested in that, I'll drop a link in the show notes, or just send me a message on Instagram, or check out my website, which is actually currently undergoing a revamp. I've had a brand refresh this year, which you would have started to see roll out. There's a new podcast art. There's all sorts of stuff coming along. So super excited to unveil all of that to you guys. The brand is growing up. I feel like I'm growing up. I feel like the brand is growing up. The podcast is growing up. And I'm so excited to see this next evolution. And if you've got any topics that you would love for me to talk about more, or talk about full stop on the podcast, please reach out to me and let me know. I've always got so many ideas in my head of what I want to share, and I almost get overwhelmed and then don't record anything because there's just too much and I don't know where to start. So that is one of the problems that I'm navigating at the moment, but a very good problem to have. So Heart School Immersion, if you are interested in checking that out, then of course check out the show notes. And Radical Blueprint Mastermind, which is my signature 8-week program, which I talk about nonstop, is also open for enrollment again very soon. It's currently, where are we? February 2021, and we're opening enrollments again in March for a start in April. So if that's something that you've been on the wait list for a while, just book your discovery call. Reach out. Let's have a chat. But let's dive into today's episode. So it is with Faye Lawand, who I formed a relationship with maybe, I'm going to say 3 years ago, when I was at the height of my anxiety and was really just looking for some kind of support. And so I did Faye's 12-week hypnotherapy program in order to really look at the underlying causes of anxiety in my life. And a lot of that traced back to my childhood, my relationship with my father, relationship with all men in my life, and just some really ineffective beliefs that I had about myself. So we worked together and it was an incredible experience. And today I can confidently say that I live anxiety free. I was on medication for a couple of years, and I've been off my medication for about over a year now. So through Faye's work, hypnotherapy, through, oh my gosh, so much. There's so much I've done, and I've recorded a couple of podcast episodes, I think. Have I? Or is it blog posts? I can't remember. I'll find them and link below, but I'm pretty sure I've recorded a podcast episode, if not a couple, about my journey with anxiety, but I've definitely written some blog posts. So you can just check out annasquelch.com/blog to read all about my journey with anxiety there. But what I understand about anxiety is that it is caused by, and remember, I'm not a doctor, so please don't come after me. I'm not trying to give advice on how to heal anxiety. I'm just sharing my own personal experience. But it's caused by focusing on what you don't want. And the more that we focus on what we don't want, because there's a part of our brain that thinks that if we worry about it enough, we'll stop it from happening, which isn't true. We just actually shine more focus on that thing and amplify the feeling. So if you experience anxiety yourself, the first thing is to recognize that anxiety is a feeling and it is something that you're experiencing. It's not who you are and it's not what you have, okay? So the first thing is just distancing yourself or creating separation between what you're experiencing and who you actually are. Because if we say, I am anxious or I have anxiety, we're actually claiming that thing. We're making it part of our identity. And so I always encourage people to say, I'm experiencing anxiety or I'm experiencing anxious feelings. And so zoom out from the situation and have a look at what you're focusing on that you don't want to happen, and then reframe that. So what do you want to happen? I want today to go smoothly. I want to get all of my work done in a, effortless manner and da-da-da-da-da. So that's just one little takeaway. I will probably record a whole episode, actually, if I haven't already, on just what I've done, the practices, the modalities, everything I've tried that has really allowed me to now be free of anxiety and living happy and healthy and drug-free. So let's dive into today's episode with Faye. We talk about what causes internal conflict, why Faye became a hypnotherapist, why hypnotherapy is not the same as hypnosis, understanding what the subconscious mind is, how it operates and how it affects our stress response, what somatic work is and what we can learn from animals, and Faye shares with us some of her favourite somatic experiencing practices, and how we can change our relationship to stress once and for all. So it's a really important episode given that we are under so much more stress than ever before and our nervous systems are really struggling to cope. There's more people attempting suicide, there's more people turning to drugs and alcohol, there's more relationships breaking down, there's more illness and disease being born from our increasingly stressed bodies. So it's a really important episode. I urge you to take some notes, listen to it slowly, and perhaps come back and listen to it again so you can take in some new information the second time. All right, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Full Circle Podcast, Faye. So grateful and happy to have you here and to be reconnecting again.
Likewise.
So I first met you I think we're going back about 2 years now, when
yes.
I can't even remember how we connected, but I came in...
For social media, probably.
Probably. I mean, where else do people
connect?
And I came and did your 12-week hypnotherapy course.
Yes.
I can't remember what it was called.
Be more.
Be more, that's right.
To help you be more of what you want to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I got.
Yeah.
And it was really delving into any kind of limitations and stuff that was holding me back. So I know that you've been on quite an evolution since then, and you wear a million different hats. So tell us, who is Faye LaWand?
So Faye LaWand is a world traveler, a global citizen, a truth seeker, a nature passionate person, and someone who recently made New Zealand home about 6 or so years ago, originating from the Middle East, a place in the world that is associated with a lot of conflict and a lot of trouble and a lot of trauma and a lot of chaos. And through my own journey with that, made my home here in gorgeous New Zealand. And the culmination of my healing journey was what I now do professionally, helping busy professionals resolve their own internal limitations, internal conflicts, in order for them to be more, do more, have more, feel more of what they want to do, be, feel, or have.
So let's talk about internal conflict, because one of your many titles is an internal conflict resolution expert.
Yeah.
So what is internal conflict?
Yeah, so internal conflict is anything that limits you from accessing what you want to be, what you want to feel, what you want to do, what you want to have. And that could look like many things. It could be past experiences that are limiting you from being where you want to be. It could be unresolved memories from the past. It could be phobias, irrational fears. It could be negative, weighty, burdensome emotions. It could be outdated programs of thinking. It could be belief systems that are, a little bit out of line or a lot out of line. It could be misaligned values, unfulfilled values. Basically, internal conflicts are anything that is happening on the inside that is creating limitation and blockage in your life. And the thing is, well, in one's life. And the thing is, we all have internal conflicts because it's just part of the pathway towards growth, progress, and evolution, right? If we didn't have these stumbling blocks, we wouldn't really have the opportunity to dig deep inside in order to find the internal resources, the lessons, and the healing to evolve and move forward to where we want to go and to where we want to be.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Does that answer your question, Anna?
Yeah. So anything that just makes us feel like we can't cope, I guess, with whatever's going on. Anything that feels a bit unregulated or dysregulated.
Yes, and that feels, like I want to do something. I know I have it in me, but why can't I? It feels like I'm stuck. It feels like there's something getting in the way. It kind of creates an imbalance, a state of conflict.
And what do you see as a lot of common themes in the clients that you work with? What are the most sort of pressing common themes that come up?
So they come to me thinking one thing is the problem, but really I always say the problem's not the problem. So they come to me because they can't sleep. They come to me because they have anxiety. They come to me because they have depression. They come to me because they have chronic pain. They can't get over an ex. They come to me thinking that those are the limitations, that those are the issues. But as you know, because you've done this work and you do this work now with others, that those are just symptoms of what's misaligned and unresolved underneath the surface. And typically when clients come to me with those issues, it's other issues that are also not working in their lives. And as you resolve the root cause of that one issue, then it has like a domino effect. All the other areas in their life that are a little bit out of balance, they get insight into, and they also they also align and realign. Yeah.
And out of all of the practitioners that I interview on this podcast, many of them had a watershed moment, which was their turning point in their life where they kind of found this work or the work found them. So what was your backstory into how you got into this work?
Yeah, that's a good question because when we've all had experiences when we were younger, when at school, and the adults and the teachers in our lives would ask us, well, what would you like to be when you grow up? And of course I never said, I want to be an internal conflict resolution expert. I mean, that was never even on the table. But it was my own life crises and health crises that led me to this point. So just a little bit about the backstory. I mentioned that I was born in the Middle East, and I was born in the Middle East in Lebanon actually, shortly before the start of the Lebanese Civil War of the 70s, which ended up spanning about over 15 years, and it claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, and it dislocated many, many more. And my family and I were part of that statistic that were dislocated and left the country. And I was about 4.5 when we left the country. My younger brother was younger, and my little sister was about 1 or 2. And I kind of grew up with the narrative and the story that we left the country of the place of conflict early in life, and we were not affected by the war. That's what I was told, that's what I heard, that's what I told myself, and I ended up kind of living with that belief, with that truth, even though on the inside things were not okay. And by the time I hit 40, my life was falling apart in very real ways and in all areas of my life. My career was in shambles, my relationships were in shambles, my relationship with myself was the absolute pits. And then I had a bunch of health crises. And that was basically when I was called to just stop in my tracks and examine where I am, where I've been, and where I want to go. And it was around the time that I turned 40, when I had my big health crisis, that I had came across this thing called the subconscious mind. And I thought, isn't that interesting? And then somebody told me about this form of therapy that allows you to access the subconscious mind called hypnotherapy. So I went to the hypnotherapist, and the hypnotherapist at the time did what I now do for my clients, instructed my subconscious mind to go back to the very, very, very first time that was responsible for the limitations and the conflicts in my current life. And guess where my mind went back? It went back in time, all the way back to that night when I was about 4.5, and we were fleeing the war zone. And my father was stuck out of the country. It was the middle of the night. My mom was traveling with 3 young kids, and there were snipers overhead, and there were bombs falling in the distance. And my mom, in order to keep us kids safe, she pushed our heads under the seats of the car. And in that moment, I couldn't breathe, and my system went into total sympathetic overload and total shock and total panic. And that marked my nervous system for all the years to come, and anchored my system in heightened stress responses and responses of heightened anxiety and panic. And interestingly enough, after that first session with the hypnotherapist, Anna, you would not believe it, I actually dismissed the session, and I left there thinking, that. You would, eh?
Yeah.
I'm like, how could something that happened when I was 5 have anything to do with where I am now? But of course, how could it not, right? Like, how could it not? And after the initial, cynicism dissipated, I went on to do a lot more of the work. And by the end of it, the transformation was so profound within myself. It kind of seemed like the next natural thing was to share these practices and to share these powerful protocols and to share these very powerful experiences of transformation with others who are experiencing their own internal limitations and are looking for viable long-term solutions that don't involve medication, that have no side effects, and connect them with their own internal resources and internal capabilities.
And that's so important, because I think that not so much in New Zealand, but certainly overseas in America and the UK, we're very heavy-handed with giving a pill, giving some kind of prescription for the symptoms that you've been explaining, rather than actually looking at the root cause, and that's what your work really focuses around. So the subconscious mind is something that I've been really interested in for a long time as well, and it's something that I talk about in my coaching work. So explain to the listener who might not know anything about the subconscious mind what it is.
Right. So the subconscious mind is the part of your mind that basically governs your survival and governs everything in your life. So it's the part of your mind that runs your body. I think this is very, very important to know. It's the part of your mind that beats your heart, that breathes your lungs, that digests your food, that grows your nail, that repairs your skin. It's the part of your mind, of your brain, that keeps you alive. Now, the other thing that the subconscious mind does is that it's the storehouse or the archive of all your previous life experiences. Every emotion, every belief, every life experience is actually stored in the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind also is a very feeling, very emotional mind. It knows it's not rational. It's kind of like, it really is like a 5 or 6 year old. A 5 or 6 year old takes everything quite literally, doesn't it? And a 5 or 6 year old doesn't really have the capacity to rationalize or make sense of anything. And that part of the mind is exactly like that. And a lot of the internal conflicts that we face later on in life, we try to resolve with our conscious mind, with rational thinking, with thinking about the problem. The reason that doesn't work for most of the population is because the program that was formed at a time and at an age where we didn't have that faculty of mind in order to rationalize. It was still very much an emotional feeling mind. So the emotions get stuck in that time, in that memory, where we didn't have the capacity to rationalize. And so this is why later on in life, if we feel that we're triggered a lot, or we're overly emotional, or we feel emotional for no reason, or we cry for no reason, or we get angry for no reason, or whatever, chances are because the subconscious mind had something happen, something was registered and imprinted on the subconscious mind at a time when there wasn't the capacity to rationalize and process with the filters that we now have as adults.
And we need that faculty, right? Because the subconscious mind is intention is for us to survive. And so
Yes.
whatever that trigger, that memory, that emotional reaction, whatever, it's coming to the surface for a reason, right?
Yes, and it will only come to a reason. One of the, we call them operatives of the subconscious mind. One of the behaviors of the subconscious mind is that it will only present something for resolution when there is an understanding and a knowing that you've got the time, the space, the strengths, and the internal resources to handle it. So a lot of
times... Who is that?
When it perceives that you have it, this is why, in my work with my clients, clients come to me, they're like, oh my God, now I realize that something happened much earlier in my life that I have repressed, and it's only coming to the surface now. Well, it's only coming to the surface now because there's some understanding and recognition that you're in a time in your life where you can handle it. And that's why up until now it has been a repressed memory, because you were not able to deal with what needed to be handled.
I didn't feel safe to access it.
It didn't feel safe to access it. And the subconscious mind always wants you to stay safe, but it also always wants you to resolve what needs to be resolved. And so it will always be looking for ways for you to resolve your unresolved issues and unresolved internal conflicts.
So that's where the internal conflict comes in. It wants to keep you safe, but it wants to resolve the thing as well.
Yes.
Those two things seem to be at conflict.
At conflict, yeah.
And the little soundbite that I always share about the subconscious mind is that it is responsible for 95% of our... Is it 90 or 95? Yeah, 95% of our operating system, right? Our thoughts, beliefs, actions, behaviors.
Yes. At least 9. It is definitely runs the show. Sorry. And this is why a lot of times when we try to resolve things just with our conscious mind, with willpower alone, for most of the population, Anna, it doesn't work. There is a very, very, very small percentage of the population that can affect change just with their conscious mind and with their willpower. But for most of us, for about 98% of us, that's not the case. And this is why we see people, they know they need to quit smoking, they know they need to lose weight, they know they need to make a change in their life and in their behavior, and they try so many ways to do it, and it continues to fail. But when they go and seek a hypnotherapist or someone who's working at that level of mind that can change the behavior at that level of mind, the change happens so quickly, so rapidly and so effortlessly, and without much frustration and with no side effects. Yeah.
So let's go a little bit deeper into hypnotherapy, because when I tell people that I've done hypnotherapy, they assume that I had a pendulum swung in front of my eyes and I took my clothes off and
you quacked like a chicken, right? Yeah. And you forgot how to spell your name and you forgot the day of the week.
Exactly. And we have shows like, I don't even know what the shows were, but we have popular American television shows to thank for that. So what, in your clinical understanding, what actually is hypnosis and what happens in a session?
Yes. I just want to address, first of all, that myth, that preconception or misconception around hypnosis or hypnotherapy is based on those shows that are using hypnosis for entertainment purposes, right? And something to keep in mind about those shows, hypnosis for entertainment purposes, is that you don't see what's happened behind the scenes. So there's so much vetting and filtering that happens and screening behind the scene before they get the people up on stage who are so suggestible and can quack like a chicken. So the percentage is like 1% of the population can go that deep, that quick, and be that suggestible. And because it is a show and hypnotherapy for show, they are screening for those people that can be that suggestible for entertainment purposes, right?
So what you're saying is that we can't believe everything we see on TV.
No, well, exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
And the media, you cannot trust what you see in the media, right? Across all platforms of the media.
Gosh, what a revelation.
Now, that is not hypnotherapy. That is a hypnosis show. What you experience and what I do in my clinic and what all my colleagues do as professional clinical hypnotherapists, we are using the natural state of hypnosis for therapeutic benefit. That natural state of hypnosis is the state, a natural state that we go into and out of multiple times a day. And just to give you some examples, when you're daydreaming, you're in hypnosis. When you're doing something habitually without thinking, you can't remember how you got to work.
Like driving to work,
Like driving to work. When you're in shavasana, you're in hypnosis. When you're watching a movie,
Netflix,
right, and your body is so heavy, and you can actually feel what's going on the screen, like your heart is beating in an action show, or you're being so moved, teary-eyed, you know, with couples who are crying, and you get sweaty palms. That's hypnosis, right? You are using your very, very powerful imagination, or your very powerful imagination is creating a physiological change, right? Now, that is the state. And also hypnosis, we come in and out of hypnosis as we're coming in and out of sleep, right? It's basically the alpha brainwaves. It's alpha and delta. So it's the slowing up of the brainwaves, the brainwave frequency. That's what we access as clinical hypnotherapists in order for therapeutic benefits. And I'm just going to take it one step further and to say that in the work that I do, the way I like to present it to clients is we're getting you in that very natural state in order to edit the memory the way a memory is registered in the brain. Once you edit the way a memory is registered in the brain, the emotional, remember we talked about emotions earlier, the emotional charge is released and neutralized. The texture of that scene and of that image is changed forever. And then your experience also changes moving forward.
Because it's never actually about the thing that happened. It's about the story that you tell yourself about that thing that happened. And then with the story is the emotion.
And the way it's stored in the body and the feeling in the body. And now this is why a lot of my work involves clearing it in the mind, in the body, and in the nervous system. This is huge because what happens when we're 5 or 6 or 12 or 3 affects the way that 3 or 12-year-old felt in the body. Who you are as an adult is a collection of all your ages and all your brain states, right? And so if that brain state or that age actually felt some strong, overwhelming feeling in the body, and that's not cleared, that's going to remain stuck in the body. And this is, chronic pain is that. When we have that feeling that always comes back, it is that feeling that hasn't been cleared in the younger version of you that experienced the trauma. And so this is where I add a lot of somatic work and nervous system releases.
And explain what somatic means.
Yes, somatic is, sorry about that. Somatic is basically anything to do with physical sensations, right? So it's basically, feelings of tightness or coolness or warmth or cold, anything that you experience physically in the body, not emotionally in the mind, right? And this is very important to address the somatic piece when you're looking at releasing trauma, because if you look at animals in the wild, they actually experience more immediate threat to their lives, right? Literally, when their system goes into fight-flight, it is literally to fight or flight for survival.
Well, they're all just chasing each other all day, aren't they?
Now, think about though those animals in the wild, when the threat is over, they don't develop chronic conditions like we do as humans, but we have a more complex nervous system than animals do. And the reason why they don't develop these chronic conditions and we do is because the animals, they reset the nervous system regularly, right? After the traumatic episode or the traumatic incident, they retreat and they shake and they just literally flush out all the effects of the stress hormones from their body, and they naturally reset. As humans, we don't do that. We're overriding that capacity of the wiring of our nervous system. And that traumatic incident, those stress hormones remain caught in the body. So they dysregulate our physical experiences, our mental experiences, and our emotional experiences. And so somatically, we feel it in the body. The body feels something. And so it's very important with trauma recovery and trauma release work to also address the feelings in the body and to release the stuck energies from the physical body. Essential. Yeah, somatic recovery is now a big thing in trauma recovery protocols around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
with good reason.
Absolutely. And you only have to look at a child or a toddler to see how embodied they are in their emotions, right? They get
Yes.
upset about something, they throw themselves on the
Yes.
ground, they kick and they
And
scream.
what do we tell them? Stop doing that.
No.
You know?
And then they get up and they're happy as Larry. They want an ice cream or they're good to
Yeah.
go, you know.
Yeah.
But as adults, it's not convenient, particularly as women, it's not
Yeah.
convenient to feel or express your anger while you're at work or while you're with your boyfriend
Yeah.
or with your girlfriends even.
Yeah.
So we hold on to it, we bottle it up, and it has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Those emotions are energy in motion, and if they're
Yes.
not allowed to actually run their process or have their somatic clearing, they just live in our body.
Yes.
And
And
then
then
turn
they're
into
going to
disease.
start tapping on your awareness. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
And that's basically chronic pain is just a signal from your mind through the body that something needs to be looked at, because the mind is always speaking to us, but it can't speak to us using language and sentences and words. It speaks to us through the body,
Yeah.
through symptoms, through sensations, through imbalances, through disruptions. And if we don't take time to look, listen, observe, sense, and feel, we miss those signals, and we end up silencing them with pills or solutions that don't really work, and we perpetuate the cycle.
Yeah, and the more that we ignore those bodily signals, or just not cater to them, not pretend that they are not happening, our intuition goes offline.
Yes.
And then when our intuition goes offline, we make poor choices in relationships,
Yes.
in our career, with our
Food
health,
choices.
food, with
Yes.
sleep, with
Yes.
everything. Everything goes out the window.
And it becomes cyclical.
Yeah. So we're starting to draw a bit of a picture here, and hopefully the listeners can kind of see why this whole piece is so important and why stress is really the end affliction of something that happened much earlier on.
And this thing with stress is so central to the work that I do. And you probably see on my social media, I say my mission is to change the attitudes of professionals around stress. And I really stand by that and behind that, because stress is not the problem, right? We need to relate to stress differently. That's what's problematic. All stress is not bad. Managing stress actually allows us, we miss the point. If all we're doing is managing stress, then we are not looking at a lot of the benefits that come from stress. We're also not looking at the need to reset the nervous system. And that balance of educating ourselves about what stress really is, and taking regular opportunities to reset the nervous system, will take you away from that frustrating cycle and all the failed attempts of trying to manage stress and it not working for you. I don't know about you, but I speak to people constantly who say, well, I do all the right things. I do yoga, and I listen to my meditation apps, and I do my diaphragmatic breaths, and I use my essential oils, and I take my vitamins, so on and so forth, but I'm still feeling stressed. And that was me, actually. That was me after all the work that I had done. That was kind of like the last piece to come on board in my healing journey. And that's because even though I was doing all of these things, I still had that very unhelpful mindset, a myth that I picked up, from a general consensus that all stress is bad and we need to manage it and we need to avoid it and we need to eliminate it. But if you stop to think about what it means to manage something, when you're managing something, you're simply coping. And if you think about transforming, with the transformation comes an opportunity for change, right? An opportunity to shift. And now the evidence is totally conclusive around the possibility to transform stress, because there's more than one stress response. And when I learned about that, Anna, it just totally changed everything in my life. There's more than one stress response out there, that stress response that we've been conditioned to avoid, fight, flight, freeze. Actually, there's 3 of them. And each one of those, when we access it with the appropriate mindset, allows us to tap into a very unique hormonal, endocrinal advantage that presents us with very unique coping strategies that actually can be fuel for us, that can actually be advantageous, that can benefit our resilience, our well-being, our focus, our performance, and our sense of purpose. But we need to start moving away from those mindsets that believe that all stress is bad and we need to avoid it. But it's not the problem. It's not the problem.
Yeah. And as soon as you're trying to manage something or avoid it, you're making it bad or wrong.
Yes.
Versus actually just seeing the stress as information, as data, that there's something in your life that is perhaps not as aligned as it could be. And I want to go back to what you said at the start of that about, you know, doing the essential oils, doing the yoga, doing the meditation, doing the breath work, whatever. And I talk to a lot of women who are in the same boat, who are trying all of the things, all of the, you know, popular things, and not getting the results. And that's because you can't do those things if you still have unresolved trauma. You have to pull out the trauma, like pulling out the weeds in the garden, before actually like fertilizing the soil and planting new seeds, right?
Totally.
Otherwise it's just not going to work.
Otherwise, it will be the battle of trying to do it with willpower alone. And for a small percentage of those women, potentially that could work either in the short term or in the long term. But for the majority of the women, they will develop quite a harmful internal dialogue and a sense of failure and disillusionment of, well, I read about this, they tell me it works, why isn't it working?
Yeah, and it creates separation between us and them, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been doing some work in schools this year and last year with year 6s, so they're 10-year-old girls. So important. And I say, you know, what do you want? What's helpful? And they say, stress. Help me deal with stress. I'm so stressed. And I'm thinking, you're 10 years old, for God's sake.
Yeah.
You haven't had boyfriends yet. You haven't had, you know, credit cards, jobs, all that kind of stuff. And
stress by osmosis.
Yeah, and then I teach some year 12 girls as well, so they're 16, and it's the ball dress. I can't find the ball dress, and my friends, you know, are being mean to me, and I don't fit in here. And
it's the story they're telling themselves.
Yeah, and it's the environment they're in.
Theirs, that they're not taking time to examine their beliefs, to challenge their beliefs.
So what do you wish that more women knew earlier on about maybe a conversation with yourself? What do you wish that you knew as, you know, a young girl about stress? That
all stress is not harmful, that there's so much benefit, appropriate benefit that comes from stress, but that you need to shift your mindset around it. And you need to understand how you do stress. I'm just going to backtrack and give you an example. Like, if you think about athletes, or you think about, you know, like big concert singers, or even about yourself, like athletes, all these big, like the All Blacks, when they are performing and when they're competing, they're certainly not relaxed. They're certainly not zenned out, are they? When you go for a job interview, or you do a big thing, or you accomplish a big thing, you're not doing it from your relaxed brain.
Yeah.
You're doing it from the part of your brain that is responsible for sympathetic functioning. And so much benefit comes from that. However, we have been so conditioned to believe that no good can come from stress, that we try to avoid it. And that keeps us cut off from the very, very useful hormonal benefits and also coping strategies benefits. So I wish I knew, I really wish I knew, but this science wasn't available when I was a young person. It was not available. I mean, growing up in the 80s, the 70s and the 80s, that was the narrative. And that was the narrative, you know, when I started my career, and even towards the middle of my career when I was burning out around the 2000s, that stress is bad. Now, this new science of stress has only come out in the past kind of like 10 years or so. So it wasn't available. And now it's available, and it is my life's work and my life's mission to make it available to people, and also to help them with the integration piece, because anyone can go out right now. You can educate yourself about anything online, can't you, Anna? But you and I know, in the work that we do, the knowledge alone isn't going to translate into the results, right? It's the integration. It's how do you apply it? How do you integrate it? How do you consolidate it? I mean, that's really what's going to make the difference. So I've taken all of that and I've actually packaged it up together in a step-by-step approach to help professionals reframe their experience with stress, to relate to it differently, so that they can get the beneficial aspects without the burnout, the unnecessary burnout that comes with that mindset of stress is harmful and I need to avoid it. So I wish I had known about that. I wish I had that system available, because that's something I had to learn through trial and error. And, it's the next logical step then is to make it available to people who want to fast track where they are instead of trying to figure it out on their own.
Yeah, and we need that stress, right? We need that adrenaline if we're about to bungee jump or going on a date or, me having a work deadline to achieve.
Totally.
I identify with being a pressure performer, as a big percentage of people are.
Same.
And so we actually need that stress, and that positive stress that we're talking about is called eustress. So there's eustress and distress, right?
That is still like the old paradigm of stress. There's actually the three new stress responses that are out there and that I teach in my programs are the challenge response, tend and befriend response, and excite and delight response. And so, yes, that challenge response is kind of like what you feel, like before a deadline, or it could be like before a big event. Interestingly, I was reading in the paper recently that Ashley Bloomfield, he's such an icon now for us here in New Zealand. He actually, before each of those 1 p.m. briefings, that he was doing during COVID, he would actually have that physiology of stress. Now, but what happened is he was able to channel that physiology, so that the psychology, so that he wasn't being hijacked by the stress hormones, so that he could really access states of presence, states of focus, and states of performance. And that's the thing when we talk about shifting the mindset around it. It's not that you will still experience the stress hormones. You'll still have the physiology of stress, but your mindset will be so different that you can actually tap into the coping mechanisms that come from that stress hormone that's being secreted. And they found that there's more than one stress hormone that's secreted with those stress responses. Oxytocin is secreted, DHEA, and each of those has a very unique profile that can be massively beneficial once you're in that frame of mind to move away from I need to avoid this is bad for me, and I need to manage it.
Yeah. So what are the 7 steps that you take people through in your process?
Yeah, so I kind of like to think of them as 7 practices as well, and that you can kind of like jump in at any point. But I always like to start with the first one is assuming responsibility for change. That's so important, Anna. You know that, right?
Radical responsibility.
It's the number one thing. Like nobody can change for you. Nobody can do the work for you. There is no quick fix. Yes, this work is very powerful, but there are no quick fixes, and you need to be willing to assume responsibility for yourself and for the results. And when you assume responsibility for yourself and for the results, nobody can take that away from you. Right? So it no longer becomes your job or your past or your ex or the country you live in, or it's none of that. It's absolutely none of that. That's where I start people off.
So that's shifting out of victimhood and into responsibility.
Yes. And also actually consciously wanting things to be better and consciously committing to doing what you need to do, in order to get the results that you want to get. Now, especially, I found that I really kind of need to spend some time on that, especially because of the work that I do is hypnosis. A lot of it involves the subconscious mind, and I think there's these preconceptions out there that, oh, you know, it's like some magic thing that happens in there, and I just go in there and she fixes me. That's nobody needs fixing, and that's not what happens at all. And you still need to be doing certain things in order to reinforce your experiences and the results that you get in hypnotherapy, if you want, you know, that transformative change that you come for. So really, really essential to assume responsibility for change. And I do a lot of work anchoring people in that sense of empowerment. Okay, then we need to do something with a negativity bias, right? We need to keep the negativity bias in check. As part of transforming stress and resolving internal conflicts, we need to work on those internal states of negativity that are part of the wiring of the brain. We also need to work on releasing tensions from the physical body. And we spoke a lot about like how, you know, the mind lives in the body, and how when we experience imbalances in the mind and in the emotions, we feel it in the body. It's essential to address tensions in the physical body. You cannot be calm, healthy, well, free, any of those things that you want if you're carrying tensions in the body. And I'm not just talking about exercise, which is really important. And I'm not just talking about yoga, which is also very important. But I'm talking about releasing tensions from the fascia, the connective tissue, from the myofascia, from the energetic body.
How do we do that?
So many practices. So TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, is so good on so many levels. So it has a wide range of practices other than the acupuncture. There's the yin yoga, there's the myofascial release, all the body work, you know, that's out there.
Lying on tennis balls under your butt. It's my favorite.
Yes, right, or on your shoulders, the soles of your feet, where you've got most of your connective tissues in the soles of the feet. Any of the body work practices, body therapies, you know, like Feldenkrais or Bowen or craniosacral, really, really, really good for that. Mm-hmm. Tapping is really good. So anything that you can do, bouncing, anything that you can do to shift tension from the body is going to be hugely beneficial to transforming stress and helping you remain anchored to states of calm, happiness, etc., etc., etc.
Got to add a plug there for network spinal analysis. Episode 32, I think it was.
Spinal analysis.
Network spinal.
Oh, yes, we talked about that.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I have yet to get to explore that. Yes, I do remember that. Yeah. Yes, absolutely, releasing. But that I feel it would also relate to the next one we're going to talk about, which is reset the nervous system, which we spent some time talking about. In 2020, with what we're going through on the planet, this is like non-negotiable. It is non-negotiable that we do something daily, regularly, routinely to balance out the nervous system.
Yeah, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like non-negotiable. I mean, all of us have experienced so much, you know, when we talk about unpredictability, unfamiliar, uncertain. Well, your nervous system requires certainty in order for it to feel safe. And where there's a perception of lack of certainty or predictability or familiarity, it's interpreted as unsafe.
It's a dysregulation, right?
And it dysregulates the nervous system, and it creates a lot of stress hormones. And of course, this happens subconsciously, even though we know we live in a safe country and things are safe here. There is still a perception and a knowledge and a knowing that things are very uncertain, unpredictable, and that creates a massive dysregulation of the nervous system. So essential, daily, regularly, routinely, we reset the nervous system. You're going to ask me how? Well, so many ways that we can do that. Of course, you know, your massages, your tapping, your yoga, that's really, really
Yoga Nidra.
Yeah, of course, Yoga Nidra, eye rest, absolutely. Also, really checking in with yourself, like really, you know, taking time out to feel how you feel and allow yourself to feel what you feel. We talked earlier about us women, we have these kind of perceptions or these programs around we can't show that we're angry with our friends or with our boyfriends or whatever. And, you know, I think that can be a conversation in and of itself, but even if we feel we don't want to express it outwardly, it's really important to express it internally and to acknowledge internally. Really, really important. So important.
I am feeling angry. I am feeling sad.
But to feel what does it feel like when I feel angry?
Right. So where do I feel it in my body? Yeah.
And how? And how does it feel? And as I spend some time just resting my awareness there without changing it, without trying to make it better, without reacting to it, what is the sensation? We're back to sensation, eh? What is the sensation? And just resting with it. I have a few of those meditations I've got a channel on Insight Timer and on YouTube that have a few of those guided audio recordings that kind of, you know, help with that. So the checking in with yourself, your body, how you are is so important for nervous system regulation. It's so, I cannot stress how important it is. So resetting the nervous system, critical. Okay, so we've talked about assuming responsibility for change, keep the negativity bias in check, release tensions from the physical body, reset the nervous system. We also talked about relating to stress differently, you know, previously. Now the other two are resolving internal conflicts, right? So we talked about what those are. And this has to also be an ongoing thing, right? It doesn't mean that when you do the work once that you'll never have things that come up on the inside.
Oh no, every level is a new devil, right?
I never heard that every level is a new devil. But during the second lockdown, during both lockdowns, I went to hypnotherapy 4 times because things come up, right? And as long as you have an embodiment, you're going to have emotions and thoughts and a body response to it. And so, you know, you need to constantly be working through it because they're pathways to growth and evolution. So resolving your internal conflicts, and, you know, you can't do that on a conscious level. A lot of these things you can do on your own, you can figure out on your own, but when it comes to internal conflicts, it's also kind of like your blind spots. And a lot of times you kind of like can't see what it is, or you can't really see how that problem is constructed on a subconscious level. And that's where I feel you need a guide. You know,
or a coach.
Guide, coach. Yeah, and a coach, exactly. You know,
I'll leave my link below.
Absolutely, do that. So resolving the internal conflicts. The other one that is hugely important is connecting to your resources, both internal and external. We all have so many resources, both within us and around us, that we can both cultivate and tap into, that when we tap into them, they give us an internal sense of strength and resilience and empowerment, and they help to anchor our nervous system to states of safety, grounding, and well-being. Now, one of the ways that you can do that, which also feeds into resetting the nervous system, and that is something I preach about constantly, is managing your social media. You cannot be connected to yourself when you're overly connected to social media. You can't really be connected to the people, the resources in your life, the communities in your life, when you're constantly doing the scrolling thing or reaching for your phone every 2 minutes, or the worst thing is reaching for that thing first thing in the morning, or, you know, that's the last thing that you see before you go to bed. One of the very first things that I work with my clients who come to me for like trauma release, anxiety, so on and so forth, is actually an agreement around digital use and overuse. It's so important, so important, because when you're looking at social media before you look at anything else, you're immediately externalizing yourself, externalizing your awareness. You're not connected to yourself, and you're feeling and thinking what somebody else wants you to feel and think.
You're being programmed.
There you go. At a total subconscious level. And then you wonder, oh, why do I feel so bad? Oh, I'm in comparison mode, so on. It's just so toxic to a sense of grounding and well-being and resilience. And so if you want to connect to your internal resources, that is actually a pillar of my work, as well as looking at the social media kind of consumption, overconsumption, and I call it practicing intermittent fasting with the technology. You know, in my own life, I go at least 10 hours without any connectivity. Half an hour before I go to bed, I unplug. So the next morning I get up, I do my practices, I shower, I get dressed, I make my breakfast, then I switch on. And the days that I don't, Anna, I see it, I feel it in my body, I feel it in my mind, and I actually see the effect in my life.
Okay, I'm going to start trying that.
It's so pervasive.
Yeah, and what you said earlier about when we are waking up or going to sleep, we're in that alpha or theta brainwave state, so we're more impressionable than any other time of the day, and so anything that we're taking in, we are believing, right? And it's becoming part of our psyche. So yeah, make the morning make the day.
Yes.
So if you make the morning all about you, all about nervous system regulation, all about setting you up for success, then you've made the day.
And intention, because when you're starting the day focusing on how you are, how you want to feel, you're not going to be reacting to someone else's agenda.
How that brand wants to make you feel, or how that influencer makes you want to feel. Yeah, totally.
Yes. So you're not in reactive mode. You have a choice. You can respond, and then you're not in internal conflict with, why did I say that? I know I shouldn't have said that. I wish I didn't do that. And you go through that cycle and loop of beating yourself up. Whereas if you just spend a little bit of time and you're quiet, connecting to what you want, how you want to feel, how you want your day to look, and then you step out into the world, and then you look at what someone else has to say about their world, your relationship with it is quite different. I think I might have shared with you. I mean, I'm quite a few years older than you. I got my first smartphone at the age of 39. And so I spent the first 39 years of my life relating to the world in an old-fashioned way, so to speak, right? And even with that, with my brain development, what it was, I now know if I'm not mindful of the phone, it can just totally take over my day, my life, and my thoughts.
Yeah. So the takeaway here is really use your technology. Don't let your technology use you.
Yes. Or I have a little ebook that I've written called Manage Your Social Media instead of so that it doesn't manage you.
Yeah. And on that topic of stress, I think a lot of people just think that stress is busyness or it's relationships or it's whatever. And we forget that there's technology stress, there's environmental stress, there's chemical, there's emotional, there's so many other stresses that we haven't even looked at today. So the chemical and stress in our environment in terms of like the herbicides and pesticides and perfumes.
Massive.
Don't bother getting your perfume when you go through duty free. It's your cheap Christian Dior's.
And now I know that you and we love our like essential oils and all our natural products.
I'm all about the Natch Butte.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you not, like now if you walk in somewhere where they've used the cleaners and the detergents, you can smell it, eh?
If I walk down the aisle in the supermarket that has all of the laundry detergents, I am like wheezing.
I know.
It's so aggressive, and if I go on a date with a guy and he's got like really strong cologne on, it's a tough time.
Or in an airport, or if you walk into a hotel room where they've just used their cleaners.
Yeah, I've become so sensitive to it.
Which is a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, take note as well. And maybe I'll do another episode just on like environmental stresses and chemical stresses and all that kind of stuff, because it's actually something that I've woven into Radical Blueprint Mastermind, my 8-week program. And one of the things that shocks the women the most when we get to Health Week is, my perfume. I didn't realize that my perfume and my cleaning products and my facial moisturizers and everything had such a chemical load. And it's no wonder that women are having such a hard time with fertility now, because we're pumping our body with all of these chemicals, not to mention the ones that are in our food and just in our environment, and our bodies aren't used to it. They don't know what to do with it.
No. And so it totally imbalances what the body knows how to do.
Yeah.
Which is to actually have a period without pain, which is to conceive, which is to be regulated and regular.
Yeah. And then it's the stress that causes inflammation in the body, which is, inflammation is puffiness. And then women think, I've put on weight. And then that's another source of stress. And then they go and do F45 or do a keto diet. That's another source of stress on their body. And it's just like a dog chasing its tail.
Yeah. Cyclical.
Yeah.
Negative loop.
Yeah. What do you feel has been the biggest lesson to come out of 2020 for you?
Very simple, actually. I've always I've known that, but I think 2020 has really shown me that you can't really plan ahead. You think that you're in control, but really, isn't that just an illusion, It's taught me to just take each day as it comes and to be present in the day. Because when we were going through the first lockdown, and as you know, my friends and my family are all over the world, that idea of like, oh my God, when am I going to see them again? When I allowed my mind to go there, I literally created a state of physical anxiety and panic in my body. And that's when I'm like, okay, Faye, stop thinking about the future. We have no control. Today, what can you do for today in your life, for today to be a good day? Tomorrow will take care of itself. Tomorrow, just focus on this day, and so on and so forth. And this is really how I've been living the past kind of 6 months or so, to handle my own experience of anxiety around this and uncertainty, is to just focus on today and to literally take it one day at a time. Because we really don't know where this pandemic is going to, kind of how it's going to evolve, what curve it's going to take. We really don't know. And that for me has been the biggest exercise of presence.
Yeah.
And you?
I knew you were going to ask me that. Yeah, I think this year has been a couple of things. A big lesson in perspective. So being the ability to hold many perspectives, I think, is such a crucial skill, that my way, my truth,
yes, Anna,
isn't always the truth. And it's through witnessing other people's perspectives that I get to actually learn, and I get to challenge my own, and I get to, there's a lot of things
I practice tolerance.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I've stood by, and I've, then I've completely done a 360 or 180 or whatever, and just changed my mind about. Yeah. And that's the beauty of holding many perspectives, is just they're fluid and they're always open to evolution. And I think it's really important. The second one would be around attachments and the attachments and unspoken agreements I create around things, and how much suffering they have actually brought into my life. And so I've really been working on releasing attachments, releasing these unspoken agreements that I create in relationships and friendships and with clients, and just kind of like surrendering. It's the big 2020 is just the big year of surrender. Like, I can't go to Bali. I can't do this. I can't do that. No. But like, what can I do? What do I have access to? Yeah.
Your attitude.
My attitude, how I respond, how I take care of myself. If you look down there on my whiteboard, I was doing this with a client last night, the spheres of influence. So what can you control, what can you influence, and what can't you control, and just configure it about. So really important tool. We're on to the rapid fire round. Are you ready? Are you geared up?
Fire?
Rapid fire.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
As ready as I can get, as I can be.
What does self-love mean to you?
Taking care of myself at the start of every day.
What would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Get over yourself.
What star sign are you?
Can you not tell Gemini?
Oh, like my mum.
Can you not tell? Hello, it's
Oh my God.
Apparently Trump is a Gemini too.
Oh God.
I just found out. Anyway.
You guys are all a little bit kooky.
Yeah. Let's not go there.
Beach or mountains?
Both, but I think beach.
Who or what inspires you?
My husband.
Oh, Crispin. Shout out. What are you working on this year in your business?
Creating online programs.
What are you working on inside yourself?
So many things. Being less judgmental.
What do you wish that more people knew about you?
That I'm a total softie.
And what book are you currently reading?
I'm not reading a book.
You're not reading? What book do you recommend?
Oh, Thrive.
By Arianna Huffington?
Total must.
Can't remember if I've read it. I'm sure I have.
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have.
Amazing. And finally, where can the listeners find you? Where can they connect with all of your brilliant stuff?
Faye Lawand, my name, Lawand, across all the platforms, YouTube as well, Insight Timer, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook.
TikTok.
TikTok isn't banned here yet, is it? Are you on TikTok
yet? I won't even do Reels. It's too cheesy for me.
I've never been on TikTok, but I hear about it.
No, I can't do it.
Not on Pinterest either. Are you on Pinterest?
Yeah, not really from a business perspective, just for my own personal stuff.
I just can't.
There's too many.
Can't keep up with it, and I don't want to keep up with it. I don't want to keep up with it.
Too many.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Faye.
It's such a pleasure. Always great to chat, Anna.
You too. I'll link to everything that you've shared in the show notes, and hope to catch up with you again in the future. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Faye. I know that it was a little bit kind of technical and brain heavy at certain points, but I hope you got some nuggets from it. I hope that you got to reflect on the relationship that you have with stress in your own life, and I hope that you got some little tips and tools and takeaways and tricks and all that kind of stuff to take away from the episode. There's so many incredible practices that you can really try to alleviate your stress, from yin yoga to yoga nidra to breath work to bouncing, tapping. What else did we talk about? Somatic experiencing, which is something that Faye mentioned in the episode, is a super powerful way. Somatic just means of the body. So somatic experiencing or somatic therapy allows you to physically release trauma and stress and emotion and all of that kind of stuff from the body. She gave the example of animals in the wild, how when they are traumatized, when they are under attack, they will shake off their trauma and then get on. And that's not really something that we tend to do much of. We get traumatized, or we go through a breakup or a job loss or some kind of stressful event, and then we just sort of sit down and watch TV, or we go out drinking, or we, just pretend that the emotion's not even there. And so it's really important for us to learn how to somatically release this trauma, this emotion, this whatever we're feeling from our bodies. So that can be through breath work, through exercise, through dancing. Dancing is a really powerful way to do it, and it feels so good. If you can find an ecstatic dance class in your city, that is a really great way to dance, to shake out emotion, to meet new people, to get in touch with your wild feminine, all of that kind of stuff. What other practices are there? There's so many. I've listed some in the show notes, so make sure you go and check that out. Faye is a yin yoga teacher and also teaches yoga nidra. So check out her website, faylawand.com, to check out whether she's teaching any classes near you. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you would subscribe, rate and review, and perhaps share it with a friend in your life who perhaps needs a little guidance with managing the stress that they have in their lives. It really is an epidemic. Stress is the number one killer. All disease is really born from stress. And so the more that we can teach our nervous systems to cope and release stress and release trauma and prevent it as well, the happier and healthier we will obviously be. Our nervous systems just are not equipped to deal with the amount of stress that we have coming in at all angles in this day and age. So sending lots of love out to you today. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. It means so much that you share this time with me. I know how important your time is. So I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you soon.